Good morning, everybody. Firstly, I would say that some 22 years ago, I think, when I first attended Mr. Hofmann's very first presentation, would I ever think that it would start to get to this size, because I think it's a great tribute to the Hofmann family that these events are taking place, and I would like to thank you on behalf of everybody for going to the trouble that you have today. I think it's greatly appreciated. So a little bit about Roadcare. It was founded back in '85. We kind of saw an opportunity to get into things like white lining, making, contracting, safety fencing, high visibility clothing manufacture, and so forth. And it was back in 1986 that we bought our first machine from Germany to take over to the UK to look at structured markings. Eventually Roadcare got sold to Giveco, but fortunately enough, back in 2017, when they consolidated it, I managed to buy the name back because it meant something to me. But more to what this presentation is about. I think it's fair to say that Highways England, as it was, now the National Highways, understood that we'd fallen behind somewhat in the concept of what road markings are about. We practice a lot and say a lot about safety and that how important it is to people. But if you look at it, we started back in 1970 to put these road trials together. And traffic volumes have increased dramatically since then. We've never done any road trials in the UK for the last 10 years, maybe more. And so when we look at that and we start to put those materials on the road surfaces that we have today, it starts to give us issues. In the UK, we do not have any specification for road marking removal. So there are a lot of issues around that. And if you couple this with road surfaces in the United Kingdom changed from a close textured wearing course to an open textured porous wearing course some 10 years ago. If you look at the specification of road trials, it says you shall not test. I do realize it was amended in 2020, but it says you shall not test road markings on porous surfaces, and there's a good reason for that, nor shall you test materials on a road surface that is it needs to be at least 12 months old. And if you think about it, when you're putting your materials down, how often do you have to follow the contractor, the tarmacking company, to do this? Yeah. So basically, this project started back in 2017. Highways England have a fund, or had a fund and still do, to look at innovation. We understand that everybody out here in their own countries do things differently. And so if somebody comes up with a good concept, they will put money into it, provided there is an end result, to try and deliver what it is they're looking for. There have been some crazy applications, one being that we should paint JCBs pink because they stand out more on a site. That didn't get the funding. So part to the problem. On the left-hand side here, you'll see that there's a lot of markings there that have been blacked out. And if you are that autonomous vehicle, which one of these markings are you going to follow? And perhaps more damning is this one. The thicker, bolder lines here are the ones that have been blacked out. Now, if you're driving along here, it is very easy to follow those and go into the vehicle on the right-hand side. So whether we like to admit this or not, there's a big problem. I'm not saying it's all created by the road marking industry. Quite clearly, it's not. This is a stretch of highway that cost millions and millions of pounds to do. And this is how we then hand it over to the public. This is 2 weeks after that road's been open. Now, part of the issue gets to be this. Everybody's driving for eco-friendly, environmental cost savings. So you can imagine that you've got all your surfacing companies, your asphalting companies in your own countries sat around like we are today, and somebody says, have we got some ideas? How can we save money? Yes, Fred. Well, we can lay it thinner. Okay, so this is actually gone from 40 millimeters thick to 35 millimeters thick. Box ticked. Savings on money, savings on environmental issues. Any others? Yes, Julie. Well, maybe we could start to look at foam bitumen. And foam bitumen is something that conventional bitumens would go and be heated to about 170 degrees centigrade, applied around 140. Now we're starting to talk about maybe we can get them down to 70 degrees at application. Great. Massive carbon reduction. Nobody in that room is going to say, but now we're going to put down hot molten thermoplastic on top of that at 200 degrees, and what we're going to do, we're going to fry the bitumen that's holding the road together. And these kind of systems rely on it all knitting together. So maybe there should be more engagement from some of the other sectors within our industry to help us get through these things. We set a competition. Basically, these are the parameters of what we said were going to be a minimum target. And we invited companies from around the world. We sent invitations out to some 150 companies from every nation across the globe. So the part of the competition was about what materials are performing better. So why should we really, if there are materials out there that are better than what we're currently using in the UK, why should we not go and look for them and try and adapt, steal that knowledge? The other part of the competition was to try and evaluate which of those materials would be removed the easiest. And so in some cases, some companies, some very reputable companies, supplied materials with the second part of the competition in mind. How is it going to look when it's removed? We fingerprinted all the materials and then took it to the ATEC wheel in Spain. Now, in the United Kingdom, that's quite controversial because we are road trials through and through. You know, we don't do anything else because, you know, we never have. But in order to make sure that all the materials that were coming in were fit for purpose, we subjected them all to 2 million hits on that wheel. And at the end of it, then we measured against 1436 to say, this is how we're going to rank the different products. The tile on the right-hand side is what actually won. That had paint on it, subjected to 2 million hits, but it had a removal agent put on it from a company here in Germany, and that was the end result, which I think you will agree isn't a bad result. Highways England drive innovation as one of their key mantra. But if again you look at certain ways of bringing products to market, 3 years to get it there is not really going to work. Materials are out there that are better performing. The one at the bottom of this particular picture is competition material. That is the standard material we put down in the UK. So quite clearly, there are a lot of materials out there that do the job. One thing as a contractor you don't get is that you'll get out there on an evening, it's pouring down with rain or cold, wet, whatever, and you've got an hour to do a job. So again, when we start talking about material testing and things, we have to make these things practical because the guys at the blunt end of the industry have an awful lot to do. Time is limited, so I'm just speeding up a little bit. I will be around all day if anybody wants to have a talk with me about it later. So what made it through to the final? 9 thermoplastics, 10 cold plastics, 8 water paints, 2 tapes. You can see that the cold plastics had 9 passes, thermoplastics 5 passes. Water-based paints, well, it is a very rough surface we choose because of the fact that it is an open textured wearing course, but not dismissing paints, and I'm not favouring any materials here because I have no axe to grind. I've had a lot of time in the industry, but I don't have any involvement today with any company in the road marking. So these are just purely and simply what went through on the wheel. Yeah, okay. And I wasn't sure today, and I don't want to patronize anybody, but basically how does a road marking work? It's really a case of trying to get the rain off the bead as quickly. There are other systems, but in principle, get the rain off the bead as soon as possible, so then they can actually start to work as they're meant to be. Why is that important? Why is it important? As you can see here, same picture on a night, once it's been raining. And so if you don't get your wet nighttime retroreflectivity correct, and we go on about safety, we go on about wanting to promote things, what people have to realize, and if you are from a government agency, these things do cost money. You cannot just expect to have all singing, all dancing great products and pay for an inferior product. And to all of this, whatever you're doing, policing it, monitoring its performance is critical. If you don't get that right, you've got big problems. On to the test. So there's always been a lot of subjectivity about how the static testing compares with the high-speed testing, compares with dynamic testing. And so what we did here, it was supposed to be application 6 months, 12 months, no 18 months. COVID hit us here, and on the night that we were doing the 12 months test, our Prime Minister said, we're in lockdown. So we'd got all the road cones out, we got the road cone off, and then go home. There is a report that's being published. I did hope to have the link to it on this presentation. It's some 110 pages of information about how these various results came through. But here you've got the various winners of the competition in the various sectors. You have the static testing, then we have the wheel, the ATEC wheel, and now we have the dynamic speed testing with 2 different pieces of equipment. And so now you can actually start to monitor a little bit about that versus that versus that. And you can form your own opinions. There is a lot of knowledge to be gained from this. I'm not saying that it benefits one rather than the other. Okay, sorry, let me just go back one. I had to put something up for Mr. Hofmann. Because in the UK we're primarily, maybe 95% of what we do is thermoplastics. So there's not a great deal of equipment out there and skilled labour to put down the cold plastics. But we brought the machine in, and the materials were applied with a UK company, and the results were very good. To the removal part of the competition, we're not aware that this has ever been done before. So part of the competition was we said to the manufacturers, please have a look at your materials. Once it's gone through 2 million wheelovers, we will take it round to various parts of Europe, have the removal companies use their equipment. If they wanted to use any softening products, do that. And then from there, we chose 5 finalists for the removal competition. And this is a video that was taken on the night by a young lady, Jennifer, from Germany here, who did what really we can't do. This again is during COVID. We wanted to try and get a lot of people in to see what's happening, but because of travel restrictions, because of everything else, getting vehicles from Holland, from Germany, UK, various places, Belgium, it just wasn't practical to get a lot of people on site. Wherever possible, we did try to ensure that the applicator, the contractor, had representation there to make sure fair play was being done. And as you can see, during times where you're having to bring people across borders, and indeed it was so important to our government that they actually gave letters of dispensation to say that what these people were doing coming in from mainland Europe was actually essential work. It wasn't something that maybe, well, we could do, we couldn't do. And again, it was with, well, the competition owes it where it is thanks to these the companies involved in it. and the various people that took part in it. One of the findings from it was that some of the, I do believe on this occasion, home ground was home advantage, because I think the guys that work with this day in and day out know maybe better to grind it a little bit before you start blasting the profile markings. But nevertheless, everybody competed, and what it did give us is a benchmark to say that this is possible. These are the kind of tolerances we can get to, and perhaps now we can start to look forward to write a specification based on fact rather than opinion. So you will have seen Aid Technology on there doing some measurements in the wet, and it was just staged for the video, that bit. Okay, so on to some of the findings. 10 of the products out of 33 were higher than 100 millicandela in the wet. So therefore, road surface, porous roads do have a bearing on that, bear that in mind. But nevertheless, if we were to start looking at introducing levels from 35 seconds up to, say, 50, it would increase driver reaction time by perhaps 40, 50, 60%. Basically, as I mentioned earlier, we have maybe a 40,000 ton thermoplastic market in the UK. But what this competition has taught us is that cold plastics, paints, tapes, they all have a place to play, but it's ensuring that you put the right product in the right place at the right time. An interesting point for me is that one. There's no point, well, there is point, but there's little point in putting down wet nighttime materials if you can't test them quickly. And if you've got 100 kilometers to test those with, maybe you're not going to do it with a handheld machine because it's going to take you forever, and by the time you get there, it's 3 years old. So we actually, with one of the exhibitors here today, actually, who has the front-mounted dynamic speed testing, we did some testing where we did the static testing on 100-meter sections, put the water down, run the machine through, and we actually came up with a 4.4% discrepancy between static testing and high-speed testing. And that is something that perhaps Highways England may take on board, or National Highways, to fund another project to see if we can get further. And that would be something, if anybody's in the audience today with those kind of interests, perhaps you could just have a talk with me. I'm here all day. Let me know about your interest, and then we could see if we could further that one. These two gentlemen, Martin Bolt, Highways England's director, Tom Tideswell, their details are on here somewhere, I believe. They are somewhere. And then finally, myself. Somewhere, yeah. So that's me. That's the company. If you have any questions, I'm around all day. If you can't get hold of me for any reason, please email me, contact me. Details are there. Thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate your attention, and hopefully you get some benefit out of it. Thank you.